billion on Earth. Well, the Jain literature records 5 previous civilizations that had over 100 billion on the planet. And we see lots of actual evidence that indeed there have been large, huge civilizations on this planet before certain continental problems took over. I mean, there's an ancient factory site in Russia that produced apparently some micro-miniature light bulbs. They found the filaments for these little tiny things that would be actually smaller than LEDs. And these are the rejects that they found in this particular waste pile. And they found them by the billions. So it was a huge operation, giant production of these little tiny light bulbs. And the Russians have found all kinds of interesting things, which is why I'm intensely studying technical Russian at the moment to get in. And
did they date it to what time period?
If you read the Russian literature, the speculation is that it was 3 civilizations back. That is to say, beyond what Western science would acknowledge is the complete range of humans. In other words, they're saying perhaps on the order of 2 million years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the particular filament material was in real good shape because the nature of it wasn't particularly damaged by weather, and it was all buried. And they just came upon it accidentally, and the news has spread gradually over a number of years. But in any event, the idea is that the Jain record, life in the order of hundreds of millions of humans on the 3 planets of Earth, Mars, and the Moon. And even on Earth, they were talking about population in excess of 50 billion. And we know, just through projection of resources and so on, that if all humans lived at the level of a Taoist or a Buddhist monk, you could fly over the planet Earth and not even know that there were 10 billion people living here because they have such a light footprint. And so it's mainly a management issue, not a population issue. And the idea that we have to reduce our population I find rather absurd because it's population pressure that will push us into the next great leaps forward, either interstellar, interplanetary, or interdimensional travel.
So in other words, the powers that be don't want 10 billion here because they feel that we will make that evolutionary leap and they will be left with nothing.
Well, also they're in the issue, yes, that's quite correct. And then there's a further ramification, and that is that they're very afraid that 6.5 billion represents the threshold beyond which they can't control anything. And these guys are all about control. Now, bear in mind they have this core concept that drives them at beyond even the personal level. And that core concept is that somehow their blood is different than everybody else's blood. This idea of the royal elite, and their languages are whole language, and no matter what language you go to on the planet, there are exceptions. But the vast majority of the more popular languages include all different kinds of terms relating to royalty and in a accelerated, or if you will, an enhanced emotional level. And so we're tuned, and we've been neuro-linguistically programmed over time to accept the idea of royalty per se, where it is an anathema to any kind of a species-oriented view that royalty should exist because they consume so much resources so totally out of proportion for their contribution. And the royalty know this, and I think they're very afraid that we've actually reached that threshold beyond which they can survive, not simply retain power, but actually exist. Because at some point we'll do as the great poet and humanitarian Percy Bysshe Shelley suggested, we will all rise up like lions because we are so many and they are so few. And few of us will sacrifice ourselves and we'll just overwhelm them and we'll be done with it. And there won't be any kings or queens in existence. Now, at a personal level, I don't like killing anything, and I'm a vegetarian for that point. I've opted out of the death cycle. But it now occurs to me in my advanced position, having gone through the compassion trap for about 15 years, that the actions taken in killing the family of the Tsar had a legitimate species viewpoint to them. And it was because they no longer had to contend with the idea that there would be that bloodline to come back and haunt them. Now, true, it was the Zionists, and it was the Bolsheviks and all of this, and I'm not speaking to the good, bad, or otherwise of it. I'm just saying it was species-enhancing to eliminate royalty, and I'm firmly of the opinion that needs to, or will occur, sooner or later. And it's just a matter of which individual royals end up dying, at what point in time. But they must, regardless of their personal contribution to the planet, in any way, shape, or form, or however much we might like them, they have to go.
Well, boy, I sure know a whole bunch of them that don't want you saying that very, very loud.
It's not me. It's not me. I mean, there are millions of us saying this, and there are millions of people coming to the same conclusion. I once looked at it this way. Examine it. I love Buckminster Fuller and his approach to things. You know, we are but a single continental island in one giant ocean in a single planet, and we can consider it to be our spaceship. And here we have people within this closed system demanding because of who their parents copulated with. And that's, you know, I can say it in a much cruder fashion, but we need not go there. But that's basically their only claim to fame. The idea of divine right to rule is long since perished, and now they're just maintaining it through their fingernails on this bloodline issue. But the Queen of England claims to own 1/6 of all the planet and all the people that live on that 1/6 of the planet. Now,
I know. I heard
idea.
that. I mean, if she would just give 1 acre to everybody on Earth, we would all have enough to survive.
I don't think it's her right to give anything to anyone, and if she were to stand before me, even though she's an old woman, and I'm not particularly a violent individual, I would find it very easy to be extremely violent to an individual that would claim to own 1/6 of the planet that I live on.
I agree.
And have no claim to that. They can't give me that acre, or, you know, they don't own it to do so with. Again, you've got to watch our language here.
I agree.
But in any event, the point being, an analysis was done of total resources, and we're now at the point where our population is consuming about 40% of the biota on the planet. That is to say that every year, 40% of all the new stuff that grows, we consume. At some point, we're going to cross a threshold, and it won't grow back, and our species will starve in a relatively short order. Well, if you actually look at that 40% of consumption, it's because of the huge amounts of waste and the giant overhead of the powers that be. For instance, every calorie that the Queen Queen of England I'm talking about, personally consumes represents a giant aggregation of calories for all of the minions that do the bidding that support this illusion that they are somehow owners of all this property and they have all this right to tax, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's this giant overhead that is going to no good effect, and most of it, from a calorie viewpoint, from keeping people alive and fed and well and happy, is being wasted. And they are quite happy with this, the elites. So to a certain extent, I absolve myself from compassion for them, because they are quite willing to go on out and kill and maim and destroy as many humans as they want to achieve their ideas and their ideals. So in that sense, they've attacked me, and anyone who attacks me surrenders their right to be treated as a human. I take Aikido, and in Aikido is created by this egalitarian human named Morihei Ueshiba. We call him O-sensei, which means supreme teacher. And he had this particular thought. And his thought was, if I align myself with the universe, and he's not speaking in an egoistic way at all, but just if I do universe's bidding, and I align myself with universe, then, anyone who opposes me is opposing the universe, and they will be defeated. And to a certain extent, as you move, getting back to our Kalaman discussion, as you move from the planetary to the galactic and finally into the universal consciousness, you are doing just that. You are aligning yourself with the universe. And so basically some of the tenets of that alignment are, my personal safety is not mine to question or do or anything about. I can only react in the moment knowing that I'm a dead individual at some point, and that's entirely up to universe. So I'll do universe's bidding, and therefore those who oppose me oppose universe, and they are doomed to defeat. Whether I live or not to see that defeat is immaterial.
That is absolutely brilliant. I think everyone in the listening audience should adopt that principle right now. The universe and I are aligned.
I say they should go and read about Aikido and take key Aikido courses. You need not take the martial art component of it to understand the philosophy and participate, because we have these key classes where you build up your key energy and learn to manipulate it and so on. It's really cool stuff.
That is incredible. Hey, we're running up to the close of the hour. You talked about a rapid reading program. Where is it? How do we find it? And how does it work?
Basically, it works by showing you one word at a time. I got my patent on it in 1999, I think. I've let the patent expire. I'm selling it on my website for $30. It's not going to be of use to a lot of people because I don't maintain the interface for it. But if you're a programmer or you know how to do macros, then you can get a lot of use out of it by plumping in other programs. In essence, what you do is you find some text you want to read, and you paste it into this window in the software, and then go to this other window in the software, and that will show you that stuff you want to read one word at a time at the speed you desire and at the size and the shape and the font and so on that you desire. And then I've got a real kicker in there. Every time it shows you that word, it's in fact showing to you 3 times, 2 of them at a subliminal level, so it makes this big impact on the visual cortex. So 2 things. If you're prone to any kind of seizures, don't use this software. It's not good for you. But it is very good for those people that have reading difficulties like myself, which include dyslexia, because it forces you to see the word correctly each and every time because of the subliminal presentation. Now, here's our deal. We don't support the software. That is, we can't really answer questions. We don't have a whole lot of time. I don't employ a staff to do that. So it works for you or it doesn't. If it doesn't work for you, send me an email and I'll give you a refund that minute. And even further, and I hate to say it because I know you got thousands of people listening here, but if you can't afford the software and you want to play with it, send me an email. I'll put a bunch of people into a list and then I'll mail them out a copy of the software for free. And they can try it and use it or not as they choose. But they're going to have to give me a couple of days to email it to them. It won't happen instantly.
Well, that sounds great. Do you know about Lynn Horowitz's H2O event that's taking place worldwide this weekend?
Yes, I'm aware of that, yes.
What do you feel that's going to do for the planet?
Well, that's actually within a stream of data that we've got that goes to the idea of what we call SOCs, or self-organizing collectives.
Okay.
We've been talking about these for, I guess, about 5 or 6 years now. And there's various different tribes, if you will, that are forming using the Internet as a connection viewpoint. And in fact, we see the extreme end of that with the Twitter revolution in Iran at the moment, where they're self-organizing collectives are attempting to get a revolution going and are supported by CIA, et cetera, but that's an issue outside of this. Lynn's approach is actually favored within our projections, and it will have a great deal of impact. I don't want to front-load people, so I'm not going to go into too much in the way of details. There's some amount of information about the SOCs, these self-organizing collectives, in our latest report, and there's some in the previous report, 1309. And basically, these are going to be much more important to all of us in the future than government and the media and this kind of thing. And what we're seeing now is the beginning of it. So to a certain extent, it's like being at that point in history when book publishing or newspapers or something came into existence. It's a very key time at this point. But I've got to be real careful about what I speak about it because I don't want to start expectations ahead of where they're projected to appear. Does that make sense?
It makes sense completely. And if people are interested in that, and I think it's liveH2O.org, I may be wrong, or just Google Live H2O.
Yeah, if you do that, you'll get it for sure, yeah.
And you'll find every place that it's taking place that is close to you. And you don't even need to be near the ocean or a lake or a water. You can do it anywhere. You can be part of this. So is there anything that you haven't covered today?
Boy, there's tons of stuff, but it's primarily in the detail. We've really run through a lot.
Yeah, we really have. We didn't get so much into the Arctic, melting and the oceans rising and the Canary Island, volcano going off and the tsunami. Are those actually, do you actually have those possibilities occurring?
We have language that would support that, yeah. As to individual particulars, we know that there's going to be all kinds of volcanoes this year. It's going to impact air travel and so on. As to a particular volcano, we can't really say, but we do know that earthquakes are going to be, destructive earthquakes are going to be a problem this year, more in the latter half than in the first half of the year, more diffuse around the planet than might be expected, no real large megaquakes, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you, Clif, for coming on. We'll have to get you back on in another month or so, if you've got the time.
I sure do, yes.
Great.